All right, good evening, everyone. Today's Tuesday, April 11th, 2023. Let's call this city council meeting to order. Tracy, could you do roll call, please?
Bermel, Harrington,
Here.
Siddig,
Here.
Smith, Wason.
Here. Thank you, everyone. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. This is the current agenda in front of us.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is our consent agenda. Really not much on there. Anything on there to pull out, talk about? I can motion for approval, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is our public comment time. This is reserved for items that might not be on the agenda already that the public wishes to speak on. I'll open that public comment period, going once, going twice, and close public comment. Item 6 is our engineer report. Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple projects to report on. Dubuque Street Phase 1 and the Jones Boulevard project, both of those projects have a handful of punch list items to be completed. I noticed that they have started on the Dubuque Street Phase 1 items, and on Jones, there's only 2 items left. Those are going to be about a month out. And one of them is the permanent pavement markings, and they want to wait. They want to do that at night, and they have to wait till the nighttime temperatures are a little bit higher. So that'll be about a month out. The Heritage Stream Bank project, they final graded the site, and they were going to seed it today, but they did not. So hopefully they do it tomorrow or sometime this week, and then that'll final that project out. City Hall, they continued construction with the building, steel, and framing. You may have noticed Main Street is closed this week. That's for the water main and the sewer connections for the City Hall. Those connections have been made and they're backfilled. So I'll be pouring the pavement back on Thursday and Friday and letting it cure over the weekend. So hopefully it'll be opened up by Monday or at least early next week. And then they're going to start on the underground detention. They might do that this week also. And what else? The library, they did all the demo work and they've got the flooring down. So now they're just waiting on delivery of the circulation desk and the acoustical panels. And just lastly is the paved shoulders, which we have on our agenda tonight for consideration of the bids. That's all I have unless you have questions.
Any questions for Kevin? Thanks, Kevin. Item 7, City Administrator Report. Ryan.
Okay, thanks. Just a couple things for me tonight. And the first is just to follow up on some of the storm activity that we had in the area. Unfortunately, North Liberty came away pretty well unscathed as far as we know. Unfortunately, our neighbors had some damage, including Coralville and Solon. Iowa City had some as well. I bring this up just to let you know that in those cases, particularly in Coralville, we had both our fire and police department down there helping the evening of that Friday storm. And then our streets department was down there on the following Monday or Tuesday, perhaps it was, to help them clean up an area in preparation for what was anticipated to be the next storm. So good teamwork there. We were fortunate enough to be the folks offering to be able to assist rather than having to be assisted. So obviously we'd much rather be in that situation. And then the other comment I would make is regarding the Centennial Park Next Stage project. We've had multiple information sessions now with the public, 4 of them in person, 1 of them online, and the one that's online is now recorded for future viewing by anyone who's interested. But it just outlines the project itself, the budget, and then talks about the capital campaign of raising $1 million from residents and businesses in North Liberty, the goal of raising $1 million. So folks who are interested to learn more about that can go to our website and just search Next Stage, and that'll pop right up. That's what I have tonight.
Awesome. Item 8 is my report. I've just got a couple of things. Luckily, Ryan knocked out one of them in assisting Coralville and Solon. We had an MPO meeting 2 weeks ago or so, right after the council meeting. And really the only thing to bring to your attention is that there will be a new the passenger rail and bus study that will be completed sometime this fall. We're hoping to have that in hand. They're rushing that so that we can have that completed. The RFP for that was due at the end of the month of March. So they've got the vendors in mind, or RFPs responded to from that. And then secondly, next Saturday, April 22nd from noon until 2 is Kites for Kids, and it'll be out at Liberty High School. A great event. A lot of community organizations that are there to support kids and families will be out there. So if you can make it out there sometime between noon and 2, love to have everybody out there. The big thing on my agenda here tonight is something that we get to repeat a little bit, but also to recognize most everyone out there in the audience as members of our Optimist Club in North Liberty. So all of you are familiar faces to all of us up here. And we read a proclamation that you had requested back in January. I'm going to reread that as well. And then all of you can come up and receive that if you'd like to, and say a few words about it's kind of a big deal for you guys here this month, isn't it? It's their 50th anniversary of being here in our community. So we wanted to celebrate and recognize them as well. So I don't usually do this, but let's reread this proclamation that I read back in January, highlight this club just a little bit, and then you guys can come up and receive it. And if you have some comments or anything to say to the public, you're welcome to that then as well. Optimist Day. This is proclamation for Optimist Day. Whereas volunteers are working with young people who are the joy of today and our hope for tomorrow, are exuberant representatives of the potential to be reached and dreams to come true. They are also unbounded in their enthusiasm to use their own talent, skills, and hard work to make a difference in others' lives. And whereas members of Optimist International will celebrate Optimist Day throughout the world the first Thursday of every February to promote their efforts in helping and recognizing the young people that make a difference in their communities and who will encourage a greater exchange of ideas between young people and adults. And whereas there are 2,400 Optimist clubs with more than 70,000 members in Optimist International and Optimist members throughout the world that carry out more than 6,500 service projects that serve 6 million young people a year. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the City Council of North Liberty, do hereby proclaim the first Thursday of February to be Optimist Day in the City of North Liberty. And may this day instill pride in our city's optimists for all their accomplishments and for their impact they have to truly make a difference in others' lives. And again, your organization, your fingerprints are all over it in our community. The impact that you have on our kids' lives, seeing you volunteering those early mornings, those late nights is an extraordinary thing to be a part of, as I've helped those events as well. So if you guys want to come up, we can hand this off, take an official photo op with you. And if anybody has anything to say, you're welcome to as well.
Nobody wants to come up and talk.
Take some photos?
Yeah, unless you were.
No, they've just got a phone over there. So.
Who wants to hold it? You're in charge of it.
Well, I can hide behind it.
Just. Let's get head over here.
I'm always able to hide.
Come on around here. We'll do this in double. We'll do this in two rows. I'll let through some windows.
Well, I think you're still
There.
Yep.
Act like you like each other.
No, it's all right. I'm much coming back in here. Are we good now, Ryan? No.
I'm gonna have to go this.
That's good.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. I think I got a couple there.
Was that I'm going off, or was that all the pictures Ryan
Did
took?
you make sure they're okay?
You in the witness protection
He
program?
is.
Perfect. You bet. My pleasure. Thank you guys.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you all.
It's a pretty nice camera on his phone. I have to borrow it for senior pictures. We're talking about cost of those right now. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So my name's Teresa Duncan, and I'm with the North Liberty Optimist. I also serve on the Iowa District for the Optimist. So I am the official lieutenant governor for this zone, which is over this club, which I'm a member of. So we really do thank you for proclaiming the first Thursday, I believe it was, in February as Optimist Day. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary. On April 24th is the official date, but we're celebrating on April 27th. So we're looking forward to having our district governor come over for our event, as well as members of the community and our club, of course. So thank you all very much. We enjoy serving the kids of North Liberty. I believe, and I'll probably say this wrong, and Dave can correct me, I think we donated somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 back to the kids of our community last year.
Wow.
So a lot of hard work, but it's really worth it for the kids.
I also want to thank you. It's always been wonderful for the sport. Yes, Chris was at my house multiple times picking up flags to help. Without it, the most wonderful thing for me is going to pancake breakfast and see people come and enjoy, and you know, everyone in town makes that possible, and we appreciate all our support, and we love helping our kids succeed. So I think last year was over 1,200 flags that was in town. We're getting to a point where we're actually going to have to find crews or make the Optimists do it for once. But anybody who would like to come to our event is April 27th at 6 o'clock at the Green State by the interstate, and we'd love to have you. Just let me know and I'll make for sure you have a meal. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, council, are there any things to report out from the last couple of weeks? Go ahead, Brad.
Well, we did go to the MPO meeting, and actually there was some funding for North Liberty in there,
Oh, yeah.
and for be part of the Dubuque Street. I think it's fiscal year 28, though. It's a little ways down the road.
All right.
Yep. And just back to the storm a little bit. I know, on emergency management, they were watching that pretty closely. They were actually sending emails out all day long. They were pretty worried about it. And then when things happened, they really seemed to get on stuff pretty quick. Because I think it started about 5 something, and they already had people doing stuff and everybody all together talking about things, about 5, 6 o'clock. So, and then last week was Muddy Creek cleanup. So we had a good time with that. It did not fall in this year. And thanks to all the staff who were there helping, and the scouts, the big ones and the little ones, and then the 4-H folks were there, and then members of the tree and stormwater board.
Outstanding. Thanks for doing that. I know that you do that every year too. Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
Could I offer one reminder that I failed to include?
Yeah, please.
April 29th, last Saturday in April, from 7 to 11 will be our cleanup day.
Thank you.
This is a long-standing tradition also. So we'll expect lines coming out onto Front Street. So if you can avoid Front Street, if you're not
Dropping
hauling
stuff
anything
off.
yeah, please do. Thank you, Tracy, for the reminder.
Welcome.
All right. Item 10 is our ATV UTV discussion. We're going to start off with a presentation, I assume, by the 4 of you in the back row there, or at least one of you.
Good evening, and thanks for letting us come in front of you guys tonight. Scott and I both serve on the state OHV advisory board. We are basically the go-to for law enforcement, city councils, everybody for how to interpret the law as the way the bill reads. I do believe, so pardon me, but I was traveling through Eastern Kentucky when I was talking to Diane and trying to get you guys the information, and technology is not a big thing down there. So it was really hard to get you guys all the information that you needed. I do have a survey here that I can hand out to you guys too, and Scott can talk more about that. But it's been great dealing with Diane on this so far, just having the conversations with her and meeting with her. But we are just coming forth because so many members of the 4-county club and the state advisory gets asked quite often about North Liberty. And tonight's just a start conversation. Hopefully emails can start going back and forth with questions and stuff like that. We're just kind of breaking the surface here. So do you guys have any questions to start with?
No, we have a mocked up agreement or what it might look like inside of it in ordinance. I'm sure that you've seen it. So that's all that we've seen so far. So
Okay.
we're pretty much a blank slate.
Okay.
Other than that,
I do have do you guys care if I hand you out the survey that Scott did?
go right ahead. And could you remind us of both your names?
So I'm Jeremy Stolba.
And I'm Scott Minzenmeyer.
Thank you.
They've got that part.
Okay, I can talk.
Yep. So I serve as the legislative liaison for the Johnson County, it used to be Johnson County, but it's now the 4-county OHV club.
Okay.
And so I've been the one meeting with all the cities and stuff in Johnson County so far. And I do talk to Brad Kunkel quite often. We always kind of keep in good communication of each other to see how things going. It is fairly new bill. We've only been at it for 9 months now.
Yep.
And but so far everything has gone actually far better than expected. As of right now, all we're looking for is more of a way through North Liberty. As far as tenant of the, having access to businesses and stuff, that's going to kind of be on them for coming to you and saying, hey, we want these guys to be able to patronize our establishment. We're looking for more of a safe alternative to get through town. Because currently right now, anybody on the Solon side has to go all the way up through Shoeyville, come down 965. And that's been Brad and I's biggest conversation is 965 is actually a very decent path to ride. It's got a nice wide shoulder and everything. But if we can lower the traffic by not having to have everybody from Solon come all the way around the county to where we could come down Mahaffey Bridge Road. So. You want to go ahead? Okay.
So as we said before, I'm Scott Minzenmeyer. I'm the other half of OHV Advisory. Jeremy and I were both involved in directly writing the bill for the Capitol. It was nice because we could work with representatives and senators and bill writers to try to correct this. Originally when the UTV law come about, or the reason for it is there was approximately 67 counties in Iowa that already allowed side-by-sides, and the other remaining counties, there was where the issue lied. And a lot of it, what we found out was more not understanding actually what a UTV or an ATV is. It's kids on a four-wheeler riding everywhere, and that's not quite what it was. In fact, the survey that we did, we worked directly with it was Representative Andy McKean at the time, and we keyed on about 10 different questions, and I think you guys probably have the.
Yep.
Okay. Where people lived, the demographics as far as dollars, the age of the people that'd be riding, how they would use their side-by-sides. Some of the big things we come up with, and it was surprising, we had almost 4,600, a little over 4,600 people respond out of all 99 counties in Iowa. Some brief highlights of it is, the average age, the dominant age here is 30 to 49. There's about 51% of the people in Iowa are that age, and plus 50, there's 28%. So that leaves kind of a minority of the younger kids. Now, those are the ones that people would think that could be a problem in youth riders. Then what we did is we went further than that in working with the representatives. One, we made it so you had to be a licensed operator. You couldn't be 16 years of age. So anybody that's going to be riding a side-by-side has to be 18 years of age. They have to have a valid driver's license. They have to have an insured vehicle. So basically all of the things that would allow you to ride on the road. They have to have working headlights, taillights, horn, and mirror. That's the basics no matter where they're at in the state of Iowa. Because our biggest thing, what we wanted to do is we wanted to have continuities between counties and towns, larger municipalities or smaller municipalities, to make it easier. So one town's not permitting and the next place you go, there is no permit, or vice versa. The first probably big city in Iowa after the bill was passed was Marion. Mike Kitzmiller is the police chief over there, and he approached me about it. So one of the concerns from a city level is there's going to be people riding all over, or what do we do about noise or time limits? So one of the things that was wrote in the bill, the city is responsible and can determine where you ride and when you ride. You also can determine if you're on a state highway or a rural highway that comes into your town. So let's say Anamosa, I'm from Anamosa area, so I can relate to that. Highway 64 is a state highway. It comes within the city limits of Anamosa. Within the city limits, Highway 64 jurisdiction is the city's. Now, anything that you would do here, if 965 is considered a state highway here, correct? Not anymore. Okay, so that I wasn't sure of. But it is a county. Is it considered a county road now? Is it
Through
still?
town.
Yeah,
Not
just
through town.
Not
yeah,
through town?
outside of
Oh.
town. it is,
Okay,
yeah,
well,
going through
anything that's within the city limits of North Liberty would be under your jurisdiction. The other thing that we were approached by, and Marion was concerned about this by some of their citizens because they opened up certain parts of town residential districts. And I did this for Mike. We did a decibel rating, and we based it off. And what I did is I went by a standard. And what this noise limit is it was taken 50 feet from a city street in between houses. And this was based on 35 mile an hour. So if you were in your residential district, which is more than likely 15 to 25, but we went at 35, which creates more noise. When you would rank that, the maximum level of a car is about 54 decibels. Like a big truck, dump truck, gas truck, something like that would be approximately 71. Motorcycles, 74, and that's a single motorcycle. A side-by-side, and I grouped it two ways, because in side-by-sides you have utility versions and you have sport versions. A lot of them are two-seaters and a lot of them are four-seaters. They're all legal to be driven on the road. What we did is we took them with aggressive tires, mud tires, and then we also took, which would be like a utility with more of a turf tire or street tire, which basically has a DOT carcass, it's called. It's not a DOT approved, it's called a carcass, which basically that's the sidewall so you can turn at higher speeds. When we took a aggressive one, the maximum that we got at 35 was 71 decibels. So no more than a big truck. And on a normal one with just stock tires on it, which would be like for road use, which you're starting to see more of, because as this bill passed, more and more people are riding on the road. They don't like to howl. So what they're doing is they go to more of a straight tread, or I would say on-off road tread, or like a multi-purpose. You're going to be a maximum decibels there of 63. So the decibel rating of these is not loud. And if you reduce it down to 25, you're taking another 7 decibels off. So as far as the city council was concerned, at least in Marion, we were within the noise limits. And it was kind of ironic because when we were having a meeting like this, a Harley came by with pipes on, and you couldn't hear me talk, but you could hear the bike. So that was one of the things. The other thing that we did when we pushed this bill through was we based it off of tourism. And there's a report, I won't hand it out because it's about 10 pages, but it's called the Iowa Off-Highway Operations Report and Expenditures. It was done in 2019. It was done by Regional Strategic Ltd. The bottom line of the whole thing, it said here there's an average of, or there's a total of 220,000 vehicles operated, off-highway vehicles. Over 159,000 of them are registered. But the part that got me here was it said Iowa off-highway vehicle owners spent approximately $72 million in 2018 in operating expenses and personal expenses. I think in that survey that you saw there, I think it was approximately what they spent on a weekend, and I think it was $500 and some dollars was the average. Now that's not spending just to get gas. That's spending at restaurants. That's spending at motels. That's spending at gas stations. That's income that comes to the city. Wisconsin, we don't have a trail system like Wisconsin or Minnesota. So Iowa is more keyed around rural roads in small cities. Some of the cities that you've seen, well, you could ask probably the Marion City Council, because it was only in effect probably 2 months, I think. Exponentially, do you see growth from small restaurants, especially on the outskirts of town, mom and pop areas, destinations? And I think what Jeremy was talking about here was more of a matter of, I'm sure the outlying gas stations and possibly, restaurants or something is a path through town. The biggest thing that we have to consider when we write an ordinance is consistency. If Lisbon has a certain rule that's different than North Liberty, and Marion has a different ruling in their ordinance than Anamosa, what you have is confusion, obviously, and we're starting to see a lot more outsiders. So you could very likely see, and it's very common anymore, to see a UTV rider that rode down from the Mississippi, from up at Delaware County, or maybe they're up, they cross the ferry from Wisconsin and come down. We've had people in Anamosa that cross the ferry over and they come down for different areas. So these are all things I think it would be worthwhile thinking about. Pardon my French, but we can't fix stupid. There's always going to be somebody that's going to have a loud pipe or a younger kid that's going to do something. But the thing that is so few and far between in the general scheme of things. I mean, you could point that at cars, you could point that at, motorcycles or whatever. So I guess if you'd want to take a hard look at it and really think of the benefits that the city could have from it, more than a distraction of having side-by-sides. Is there anything else that I can answer for you, or? All right.
Yeah, we'll just stay tuned. We're going to have some conversation.
So all these have roll cages.
Yeah, so this is a UTV ATV law. By law, we had to be able to do this to get it to pass. Some cities, like the city of Marion, does not have ATVs allowed in their ordinance. So in that respect, if you had a side-by-side, all of them have roll cages. They all have seat belts. They all have working lights. I mean, and if you've seen the newer ones, they're as big as a small car.
And this is not for the four-wheeler that one person can ride on.
Well, that's up to you.
Okay.
The state law allows four-wheelers on city streets. If you have on primary and secondary roads, you determine if they go on city streets.
Okay.
In all the towns, and I can't name you all, I would say, what would you think? Probably a 50-50? Some of the towns are allowing them.
We actually have some towns that are actually going back and changing it because they're not a statistic. There's very, very few of them even out there anymore. The dealers will tell you.
It's the minority in the city.
I see.
There's just nothing there, and statistically, they're not.
We had, and there was, from the university, I think there was one in several of them, and we actually looked at safety along with the Insurance Institute because, when we put this bill through, we had to deal with lobbyists from the, the Department of Transportation, the DNR, from the insurance industry. The Department of Transportation and the DNR, there was not a problem. One, in the insurance industry, after the 35 mile an hour was basically the kicker there. I mean, that's where it had to be in their mind to be safe. And the ironic part about that is these vehicles come with roll bars, off-road tires, and can go 60 mile an hour in the dirt, no problem. If you slow them down to 35 on the highway, they're pretty darn safe. They're designed to handle at higher speeds. So that wasn't an issue, but it was brought about, and the horror stories came about of all the accidents and how exponentially they would get greater as the more side-by-sides or ATVs were on the road. And when you really looked at the statistics in Minnesota and Wisconsin, it just wasn't there. In proportion, if you had 500 more side-by-sides come, did the accident rate go up higher? No. And if you actually review the accidents that have happened, excuse me, right now that we've had, a lot of them been single passenger or single driver, no seatbelt, driving on a gravel road, and they're a lot of times underage. So they're self-inflicted ones. They're not attributed to somebody driving on the road and they're involved with a car accident or something. And like I said, there will be something sometime, but that's just, I mean, there's nothing we can do about that
Right.
besides educate.
Right. I don't have anything necessarily to point in one direction how we go with this. I mean, I like the idea, and we have something in place in the snowmobiles, and I'm sure you've talked about this already with our police chief. And this is not what I thought it was when this loss first came out. And I had a good friend bring that to my attention, and he just was very persistent about it. And it's like, and they trailer over to Solon, and they'll ride that trail. And he says, I'd love to just ride over there and not have to trailer all the time.
Well, and that's another thing you saw probably in that survey. They talked about it. As far as people that they would go riding in more areas, or they would come to towns if they could drive. Because when you look at this, 2-seaters and 4-seaters, and a lot of times it's mom and dad and 2 kids that go to Dairy Queen on a day like this. So those are the kind of things we'd see. And from a legal standpoint, most of the towns we've talked to, the city attorney, I mean, you can review it and go through others. There was not a lot of legalities as far as, when the bill was written, it was designed for the cities to determine, what they want to do. That was the key thing. We didn't want to, have preemption come into play where whatever the state law was, you had to follow. And so we left it that way.
Appreciate that. Do you guys have any questions for Scott or Jeremy?
So this is a statewide survey?
That's a statewide survey. When we sent that out, we wanted to hit every single county in Iowa.
Yeah. You don't have any statistics on who would have responded to this from North Liberty or even Johnson County?
I can give you numbers of how many. And if we wanted to dig down, I could dig you probably a stack this deep. We would have to go through that way. But we didn't document it that way. We do have the names. And a lot of people, they didn't have to respond by names. The curiosity of the whole thing, and what was ironic about it, there is a 40-page report made by a company here that is a consultant company to do this economic impact study. And they sent out 3,000, and they made this whole study from 300 respondents. We sent out, not yours that you see there, this one here, and you can source this online. We sent out, and we had 4,600 people respond. And every single one of them, there was wide range. And let's say if you took the 4,600 and threw 10% of them out because their buddies did it twice or something like that, you're still way, way over what this whole economic impact study was, what they came up with.
I mean, so I guess one question I have not seen any of these around North Liberty, around in Johnson County. There are people riding these on roads.
You don't see them in North Liberty because they're not allowed to be in North Liberty.
Well, I get that, but even out, I mean,
go by Solon. Probably spend an afternoon by Solon.
I live on a dead-end road south of Shoeyville, and I was outside all day Sunday, and I counted 62 machines go by my house.
Okay.
Everybody's just out enjoying the good weather.
Anamosa is a population of about 7,000 if you take out the reformatory, but on any given day on Main Street, there's probably 10 of them sitting at a restaurant or across from an eatery or a store. Husbands and wives drive them in. So, obviously as it gets known that there's access to get through North Liberty, right now, probably part of the reason you aren't is one, you can't come into town. So you loop around, and that's probably more why you don't see it in this area.
And I guess to staff, I mean, we have not heard from businesses or anyone about this at all. I mean, obviously we're very early in this, so people probably don't even know about it.
I haven't heard anything at Chief.
Only North of Town business has reached out, nothing in town.
Okay. North of town business.
If we can get the Sushia, that would be awesome.
You know, one of the things that, and it was part of the bill when we wrote it, there was a handful of towns in the state of Iowa that were charging a fee to permit their vehicles. That's one of the things we did want to change. A city can have a permit or need a permit for your unit if you live in town, but you cannot charge for it. But it just seems in vain to even do that because of the staffing and you're supplying a sticker and whatever else. Why would you even need to do that? And the perfect example is I don't know if you know where Knoxville, Iowa is. Knoxville has what they call the Sprint Car Nationals. Is it kind of like the Indy 500 of their, but on any given weekend, on a given weekend in August, there's about 600 side by sides that come into town because they use them for tow vehicles for the race cars and stuff. So they're probably within a half a mile of the downtown. And the city administrator and I think the police chief at first thought that they should permit everybody. Well, that was a nightmare, and it come to light real quick. It was because it was in their ordinance at the time that they needed to have a permit. Well, there right away deters people from coming in. A lot of the people you're going to have here live here, but a lot of the people are just going to be passing through.
Swisher's a good example. They had a permit. Swisher had actually
Oh, that's
passed
right,
an
yeah.
ordinance before the state did. And, of course, there was no county ordinance. And they required a permit, but once the state ordinance went through and they couldn't charge for it anything to them, it just kind of...
Lisbon was the same way.
Yeah.
Anything else
I don't
for
think
these
I
guys
have
while they're here?
questions.
I would not be in favor of something that doesn't have a roll cage.
Yeah. Well, and there again, that's where you decide, and it's up to the city council to decide whether ATVs are involved or not.
I will speak on that. I don't own one. But a big part of this bill was hunter opportunity. That's why the DNR was a big support of it. North Liberty would be a huge access to for hunters. Most of your hunters are using ATVs. It gives them access to the Hawkeye Wildlife Area, things like that. And like I said, they're not a statistic, especially on the road. Off the road, I can't speak on that because that has nothing to do with our bill.
This has been helpful, and I know that this has been many months in the making, getting this meeting here. So I appreciate you meeting with our police chief and discussing with staff. Like I said, a year and a half ago, this was an idea that's very different than what it looks like on paper right now, and it's really helpful for me, and I would assume a lot of other people to see really what this is and talk to somebody that owns one. He just messaged me a few minutes ago and says I'm watching online at home. So this is an important thing for those folks that would just want to use them. They just want to get from point A to point B.
Well, and when you look at the demographics, it's not all young kids. It's family oriented.
Right. We'll let you guys sit. I don't have any other questions, and we got just some conversation to have about how we go on. So do you have a copy of what we have in front of us as a possible ordinance?
Yeah, I actually sent.
Okay.
I've sent one. I don't know if it's the same one or not. Okay, yeah. On the layman's terms, on the very back of it, it does have the Iowa State Advisory email. That would probably be the best place to ask any questions.
Okay.
Because there may be a question you guys stump us on, and we have direct access to everybody in the state, so we can get it answered pretty quick.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks.
You guys ready to help us out on this?
We'll do our darndest.
Okay. So I guess what I see in the ordinance language was the snowmobiles and the ATV, UTVs in the same ordinance, but their access through the city would be treated the same, or would they be looked at entirely differently? Whereas an ATV, UTV it can be on our roads as long as it has all of those 35 mile an hour headlights, seatbelts, roll cage, stuff like that. So that's a nice first question, is that this is allowing these to be on all of our streets. as compared to the snowmobile that just is, we're providing literally an access point for them to get through town. We don't want those to be on the streets or the bike paths.
Right. So what's in your packet is our Chapter 75 is relates like many cities' Chapter 75s. It was written by the same company a zillion years ago. Had to do with snowmobiles, and then they added ATVs and UTVs and off-road motorcycles and thus and such. So you'll find a lot of cities that have Chapter 75 dealing with that same topic, and they have diverged a little bit over time. And so the city's current ordinance, long-standing ordinance, deals with snowmobiles, ATVs, UTVs in the same breath, and then says snowmobiles, however, can have a certain designated route as established by the city council, and you've recently all been part of that discussion about where and when and how and the details for snowmobiles. What's in front of you is my effort to incorporate as much of the Marion ordinance into the current Chapter 75 with respect to UTVs as is reasonably practical without starting over from scratch. And so what you have in front of you there is a draft that allows, I believe, UTVs on any city street, provided they satisfy certain safety requirements and setups, and then they would have time restrictions, and then you could also designate streets that are not permitted. It would be the inverse then, I suppose, of snowmobiles, which are, you can't go anywhere except where we say. This would be you can't go anywhere. You can go anywhere except where we say you don't. That would be the main distinction. But this is just trying to take, after our conversation with Chief Venega, looking at what was maybe most palatable from a safety standpoint and a character standpoint and all the other things you want to think about for this, thought that the Marion's ordinance was the best one to start with to have a conversation with you guys and see if this is something you're interested in.
Okay. I'll just kick this off and start off. You guys are going to laugh when I ask this question. Can you define the difference between an ATV and a UTV?
An ATV is a four-wheel, and typically a single passenger, which is a straddle the seat.
Which is what I grew up on as a kid, but it had three wheels. Okay.
UTV is a side-by-side steering wheel.
Okay. Okay.
Now, there is a big difference between what a legal ATV is and what isn't. Most of them now that are legal are pretty much a strictly utility. A lot of people start thinking of ATVs as more of a race type four-wheeler. Those are not allowed. They don't have the proper equipment on them or anything to be allowed.
So the ATV and you're referencing then that are legal, they're equipped with the headlights, the tail lights. They just don't have a roll bar on them as Councilor Wason, or a seatbelt to them. Yes.
And a lot of them now, and it even states on when you purchase, there are some two-passenger ones that actually have, a safety seat in the back so somebody can't fall off the back.
Okay.
They were used a lot in Wisconsin, Minnesota, those areas for tourism.
Yeah.
People that leaf runs or things of this nature. So they are, as far as in an in-town atmosphere, besides the roll bar, they would probably, I mean, they're a safe vehicle. I mean, it would be no different than, you'd probably be safer than if you were on a motorcycle.
Okay. So that's the only distinction I have. Councilor Wason brought that up with the roll bars. And when I thought about this a year and a half ago, I'm thinking of a four-wheeler, the stupid things I did on my three-wheeler when I was younger. I wouldn't want me driving through North Liberty I won't tell you how old I was when that happened. So I'm inclined to, I don't get to vote on it, but I'm inclined to limit this to the UTVs as a result. And that's, I think, what you were thinking too, Brian.
Yep.
With that, what are you guys' thoughts on what we have in front of us for a potential ordinance and the language inside of that?
I want to say thank you for distinguishing the differences in vehicles, because in my head, I always go back to the same thing you mentioned with the three wheels and just thinking of that. But in terms of this, the UTV, I would be more in favor of.
That's the biggest thing we've seen over a period of time is the education process, just like you were saying. There's been times in Marion when we actually had one in the parking lot. It was a total different ballgame for everybody because they realized it's as big as a small car.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's probably just as safe besides the fact of an airbag. You have a roll bar, you don't in the car.
Yeah.
And that can be arranged too, if you guys would like to, for us to bring machines down to the next meeting. Yeah.
Brian, Eric, what do you guys think?
So a grant question maybe. So are they considered motor vehicles for driving impaired?
They are. Yeah, a motor vehicle is any self-propelled vehicle. So yes, they would be subject to. But I mean, that's outside of our, not outside of Diane's work, though.
Yeah, just want to make sure and stuff. And
This was brought up at the state level. Besides the speed limit and the headlight, taillight, the normal functioning items, we get a lot of emails at the advisory as far as like child seats. How does that work? Does a younger kid have to wear a helmet? Or the way it was left with us and working directly with the state, all of the laws that you would have in a motor vehicle as far as child seats is the same way in the side-by-side. The rear-facing seat, the way it needs to be belted in, different legalities, things in general, that if you're a motor vehicle and we are on, a state highway or we are on a secondary road, that's the way the DOT is.
So right now we have, we allow snowmobiles on Scales Bend Road, basically down 965 Ranch Way and up Scales Bend Road. Is that right?
And Front
Sounds
Street.
right.
And Front Street.
Front Street as well. Yeah, okay.
Between
Centro.
Central to get kind of over and across.
Okay. I guess I wouldn't have a problem doing that with these because I think they're probably safer than snowmobiles. But unless we have demand from others, or from businesses in town, from residents in town, I mean, I just haven't seen that. So I guess I'm not sure I'm in favor beyond that.
Can you clarify that you would only want the UTVs to be on the same path as the snowmobiles?
I think we've already allowed snowmobiles there, so I don't see a reason not to allow UTVs.
Well, snowmobiles, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Please
Please
continue.
do.
There is something in the state law that a UTV cannot operate on a snowmobile trail.
Oh, sure. No,
So it would need to be on a road.
Right.
And I don't know if some portion of our snowmobile trail ends at a cornfield and picks up on the other side or not. It does not. Okay. If it's so, I remember there was a discussion about that at one point, but so they would have to be on the road and not operating at the same in the same exact location as the snowmobile. That is per state law.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and I get that. I mean, these are going to be on the street, not on a snowmobile trail. So, but again, I think I'm happy to hear from businesses in town who want this business. So, if they're out there,
What would be the opposition to letting them go if we don't hear from businesses, just letting them operate and pass through? Because right now businesses don't know about it. They don't have the customers coming up. They don't have people coming up to the counter saying, I wish I could ride my UTV in here. Probably not. So counter to that, what would be the difference in just allowing them to be driven on streets?
I guess if they're not hearing from people that are asking for that, maybe people don't want it
Are you looking at it just from an economic development standpoint?
to some extent. I mean, I guess I don't know I don't know. Maybe I'm just being obstinate, but I just don't see a reason to do it at this point.
You have been guilty of that in the past. I can agree. So I think this is just an access point, another way for folks to get from, like I said, from point A to point B in the community.
I also think that given the access point, you may start hearing and seeing more people,
Maybe.
be interested. As he mentioned on the outskirts already, what he's seen on Sunday, that's outside of North Liberty, but to come in to town, closer to town.
Can I ask, is the route that you're discussing, does it go by any gas stations?
No.
It's just like you described in the beginning, it shortens the path between, say, Solon and Swish, or it's a different path to get, or down to Tiffin.
And there has been some cities that have started out small, like, just one direct route. But what I would say is, if you thought about that, is if you planned it, it's going to be a single route, when you pass it by a gas station,
Mhm.
and you might see the numbers and then get some positive feedback.
True.
So what we get for feedback on that kind of stuff is ultimately it comes down on her, because you're gonna get a lot of people that are not from this area riding through, and then that's where it gets confusing. Granted, we all realize we should read every town's ordinance, but you may end up getting a group of people come through and they might run over to the gas station. It's not legal. That's gonna be for her to deal with, and she probably doesn't want to.
Yeah, and I think it's just easier than if these are allowed on streets, period.
Because
Right.
there will be a sign, I mean, the only way you could really make it feasible to work with signage,
Mhm.
and that's an additional cost.
Right. And enforcement then too, like you said.
One of the other things that you are basing most of this off of, Marion, are you putting turn signals in?
I think if I could, I know you want to get into the weeds, but Diane and I and other staff members have not spent any time on this ordinance, as you can tell. No offense, Grant. We would like an opportunity to offer a recommend. If the council as a whole is interested in this, we would like an opportunity to offer a recommendation on those types of things that they just talked about. Vehicle specifications, routes that we think are applicable, and make a recommendation. We can continue to have this conversation. I don't want to stop that.
That's all right.
But we intentionally did little work on that ordinance just to gauge your interest in general on how you feel about this.
Well, these vehicles are significantly safer than golf carts. So if you remember the golf
I was
cart
waiting for you to pull that one out.
thing and stuff. So I mean, they have seatbelts and stuff, and so I would prefer that they all have roll cages and they all have brake lights and tail lights and headlights and turn signals in a rear view mirror.
The only thing I would say about turn signals is it does not produce consistency between towns. By the state law, and there again, I'm just throwing this out there, by the state law, they did not put turn signals in, and the reason they didn't is because it was an ATV, UTV law, and ATVs do not have turn signals. The drawback was, and Mr. Kitzmiller from the police chief in Marion, and I refer back to him, is that was the only way the council would pass the law. The only problem is if you're somebody coming from out of town and there is no other towns that require it, you're automatically it's gonna make your job harder to try to enforce. Now granted, if you know they're not coming here, I guess you can do that again, but
Well, and that's what I would suggest is be patient on the turn signal thing, because I tell you right now, there's probably only about 10% of machines that have it. Marion has it. Marion is not Marion doesn't bring the county people in. It was more for the people inside of Marion, where you're gonna have people from both sides of the city passing through. All I recommend is being patient with them. Everybody does retain signals quite well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Can I just ask that staff bring us?
Yeah, and I think that's what I was just going to say. We've got, we don't have a full deck up here tonight, but we do have enough of a consensus for you guys to continue this discussion.
Can I ask one other question? It has nothing to do with safety, but you talk about how people travel through. What is like the average distance that someone would travel in a UTV vehicle?
there again, if you allowed it, and now they're allowed to drive, in Wisconsin, there's a trail called the Cheese Trail, okay? It's an old railroad driveway, but it goes through several cities, Mountain View, Mount Horeb, several of them, and what is that, 8 miles long? Like I told you before, we had people in Anamosa that came from the river in Dubuque, and that's an hour and a half away. So there's a lot of crossover. I think what you're gonna start to see with the models, you're gonna start to see tourism where people are actually gonna do this like a motorcycle ride. I work directly with the DNR, and there's been suggestions, it's a down the road thing, but of actually having, you know, how we have the scenic byway in different areas of the state, of having something like that addressed for off-road vehicles or UTVs, whether they're stopping in small towns, whether it's gravel or rural. So you could see people running 200-300 miles, as long if they could go to a town and have a nice motel and a restaurant. They do it on bicycles.
Yeah,
They do it
true.
on motorcycles.
True.
To answer your question more specifically, I got a map system in my side-by-side, and writing more of this type of stuff, usually your average is 180 miles a day.
Okay.
If you ride all day long.
Thank you again, guys,
Thank you.
for informing us and being a part of this discussion. If it's okay with council, we'll move on and let staff get back to, or get to this, not back to it, to go do something about this now.
Thanks.
Thank you again, guys. All right, item 11 is FY24 budget, and item A is our public hearing regarding proposed FY24 budget. Are you here for the FY24 budget? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing for our FY24 budget, and going once and twice, I will close our public hearing. Item B then is resolution number 2023-36, a resolution adopting the annual budget and capital improvement plan for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024 for the city of North Liberty, Iowa. Could I have a motion to open this for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions for staff? There's a lot of information in there.
No, I would just say I think I would be a no again because of the use of ARPA funds for social services grants, but with the change in the legislative, and with the rollback change, I am in favor of this at this point. So.
All right. So obstinance just has a softer side sometimes, doesn't it? Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Tracy, can I have a roll call, please?
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 12 is Ranshaw Way Paved Shoulders Project and Resolution. Item A is Resolution number 2023-37, a resolution accepting the bid and authorizing execution of the contract for the Ranshaw Way Paved Shoulders Projects, North Liberty, Iowa. Could I have a motion to open this for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions for staff?
This is the one with the
Bid
the
alternate.
special marking.
Yes, pavement markings,
Yep.
the durable.
Anything else? All right. Tracy, roll call, please.
Sittig,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 13 is our 2023A bond issuance, and item A is public hearing regarding proposed 2023A bond issuance. Again, open the public hearing. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Item B is resolution number 2023-38, a resolution taking action, additional action on proposal to enter into a general obligation loan agreement, combining loan agreements, setting the date for sale of general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2023A, and authorizing the use of a preliminary official statement in connection therewith. Could I have a motion for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions about this? Tracy, roll call, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 14 is our parking resolution. Item A is resolution number 2023-39, and this is a resolution approving parking control devices in the city of North Liberty, Iowa. Can I just have a motion to open this conversation, you guys?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We all have in front of us a hard copy of what Russ sent to us tonight. And Russ, I got a question about, I guess, the schedule on there. In the parking time is from 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. Could we pull that back to maybe about 3 p.m. or so? Because the one business that objected really doesn't have anything going on for deliveries past the 2 o'clock's their last one. So maybe that might help. sensory kids?
Yeah, the only idea there was that it just didn't make sense to do 30-minute parking for 24 hours. So we kind of just thought, what would be outside of, normal business hours.
Yeah.
So I'm not really beholden to that time frame at all.
Okay.
It was an enforcement consideration.
Okay. So with that, making any changes like that, or, I mean, do we move that tonight and make that set in stone and have any more conversation? I mean, thoughts? That's the only thing about this that popped out. I do see it being an inconvenience for that one business in helping another business that was inconvenienced that literally has parking spaces taken away.
Yeah, the Century Kids, they make some compelling argument and seem to really try to, hey, we'll move our staff out of the road and everything and stuff. So I don't know if maybe a couple of spots on the south side there, right there by the corner, could be just regular, and then the ones closer to the Naomi's Kitchen could be the 30-minute ones. Then that would give them a little bit of
That's an option as well. Sure.
Yeah.
a little bit of flexibility because
They'll have access to that ramp over there too, and you don't want to, inconvenience them as well.
and apparently they don't want the kids having to take kids across the street.
Right.
And,
Right.
stuff.
And there were some comments that were brought up that we appreciate, which is, signage that people can park over at the park. We thought that's a great idea. We're going to implement that no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about a mix too, and whether I think they proposed 2-hour parking. Is that Sensory Kids did? And
They did, and I spoke with the owner, and they indicated that their clients tend to be in that 30 to 90 minute window, and so if that I haven't personally observed that being the problem, but if it were the problem, it wouldn't seem to really solve the issue out there. I mean, it's from our perspective, we don't have really, we don't have a downtown, so to speak. This is our downtown, but limiting parking obviously in downtown areas is not uncommon. It's just to kind of keep people moving and turning them over. And we don't know who's parking there. It could be the residents over above the bike shop. We're just not absolutely sure. We also talked with Paul Park, who owns where Heinz and Naomi's is, as well as the police station. Kind of worked out some things that that Laura could use where the dumpster is to temporary, if there's loading or things like that. So certainly have encouraged communication with tenants as well, and we're hoping that kind of all of this will be a benefit.
So what action can we take tonight? How much clarification can we have, or do we need to see a fresh resolution?
No, I think you can amend the resolution.
Okay.
I don't mean to be the attorney here, but I think you can.
It wouldn't,
Speaking out of turn,
it wouldn't
just
hurt
let
to
me know.
hear from the attorney.
Oh, hi, guys. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on?
You can certainly have a motion to amend the attached. I believe there's a chart here that's attached to the resolution. And as long as we can identify what your proposed amendment is doing, then move in second, vote in favor, and then that he can enact it thereafter.
Back to the resolution. Okay.
It would help to have kind of clear discussion and a clear consensus and a clear direction on what to do. But as long as we can parse it, yeah.
Yeah, sir.
Right.
There's a time frame, and if there's how many spots.
Right. So I think there were just those two things that were offered as suggestions. So 3:00 time frame. You guys feel okay with that?
And then having those two
Yeah. So how do we say that then?
The two
closest to the
most,
corner.
yeah. So
So
the
I
two
don't know.
western.
It is. So I would suggest the two most western and the accessible parking space for a total of 3.
Okay.
Those would be subject to normal parking restrictions. And then the 30-minute would be the parking spaces east and the 3 on the
And
south
across
side of
the
the street.
Yeah.
On
I'm sorry,
north
the north side.
Yeah.
Would be subject to 30 minutes.
Correct. Yes, and we did speak with Sugar Bottom John over there. He was in favor of 30-minute parking adjacent to his building, his business as well.
What time do we start? The 30 minutes?
That all day.
It started at 8 a.m. currently.
Okay, so 8 to 3.
Yeah. That sound all right? Okay.
I think they have one evening late, a little bit later for the kitchen, but I guess hopefully this will help.
I didn't recognize that. What time?
I think, isn't there one of their nights is 2 to 7 or something?
to be honest, I'm
I
not
think
sure.
that original, but we'll get most of them anyway.
Okay. Tracy, do you have all this kind of written down?
The two most western and ADA spots would be subject to normal parking restrictions. The ones to the east and the ones to the east and the three on the north side would be subject to 30-minute parking restriction from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Are there any current parking restrictions in place? That was the only thing about what you had just read about those 2 spaces. Can you say that again? There were 2 spaces plus an ADA accessible.
Normal parking restrictions, which is 48 hours street storage,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
snow emergency.
Okay. Does anybody want to move what Tracy just said?
So moved.
Second.
Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, fantastic. Any other discussion?
It was a lot of what she said.
It was. All right, Tracy, can we have a roll call on that amendment, please?
Sittig,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Motion carries. And now any other discussion on the resolution? Okay, Tracy, roll call on the resolution, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries. Good work. All right, item 15 is Solomon's Landing Entertainment District, and item A is resolution number 2023-40, a resolution approving the final plat for Solomon's Entertainment District in North Liberty, Iowa. Ryan, thanks for sending that over to us. Could I have a motion to open this for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions about that?
We're moving along. People are excited.
Tracy, roll call, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16, anything for old business? Item 17, new business. Would anyone like to motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.